So today I am coloring the latest page in my Realm Ethereal comic book series, the Realm Ethereal. This is page 22, issue number 4. I want to talk a little bit about coloring my comics, and kind of like how quite honestly, I have this kind of love-hate relationship with this phase of my comic creation as an independent creator, because being in the boat that I am, excuse me, I do it all. I've said that before, but pretty much, as a comic book artist, for me, it is a constant dance that I engage in between the lines of my artwork and the vibrant colors that eventually bring it to life. So diving into the world of coloring my own illustrations has been something of a mixed bag, as I've kind of hinted at. It's like a fun, delightful, but daunting task that holds both charm and challenge, at least for me. I'll start by saying that black and white artwork has always held a special place in my heart. There's something that is, I think, incredibly raw and authentic about the ink on paper. Yeah, I think it strips the work down to basically its essence. It's showcasing details and highlighting the intricacies of the art without any distractions. Not dissing on colorists or anything like that, but I do recognize the power of color in comics. It has the ability to transform and elevate the narrative and create an emotional connection with the audience that sometimes is missed with just black and white or just monochrome. So on the pro side though, coloring my own work is kind of like painting digitally. There's something genuinely thrilling about seeing my lines, the forms and compositions come to life with a little bit of color, with a dash of hue, as they say. Procreate, and among other digital platforms like, of course, Photoshop, they've become like an extension of my brush. They allow me the freedom to experiment with, a bunch of different palettes without the worry of running out of paint or destroying the underlying art. I think I've had a couple of videos, or at least one, where I show some of the old comics that I've done when I was a kid, whether it was on binder paper or a cheap typing paper, where I would draw it in pencil and then come back in with some colored markers. Back then, that was my earliest foray into adding color to my artwork, right? That's all we had when I was 10 or 12 years old back in 1984, 86 or what have you. But today, the versatility of these digital tools like Procreate, which is what I'm coloring my artwork in here, the versatility that these digital tools offer basically is unparalleled. They've opened up a playground of creativity for me where the only constraint is my imagination. Yeah, I still draw digitally every now and then, but by and large for this comic book series, especially if you followed me on my last few videos here over the last few months, or at least this page, because it's taken me a hot minute to get this page out. I've just been paper, ink on paper. So while the digital painting process is not only satisfying creatively, it also aligns with the desires I have to be an artist, to express myself beyond the boundaries of black ink. So there is something to say to that as far as adding color, even though I really am drawn toward black and white line art. Basically, the color breathes new life into my characters and the settings. It enables them to leap off the page with a vibrancy and personality. And I think the act of coloring also becomes kind of like a meditative practice. Each stroke of color is deliberate, and each layer is meticulously chosen to convey the right mood or shift in tone. As far as the way I work, I'm the writer, the inker, the penciler, the letterist, and also the colorist. So I'm able to pretty much weave all these different aspects of creating a page under my own hand. And I don't know how common that is with some of the independents, but it certainly is for me. But like all good things, there's a caveat, right? For me, coloring consumes time and energy. And admittedly, it's time that I could be drawing or penciling the next page and inking it. But doing colors is something I've had to adjust in my workflow. The additional step of adding color demands like a longer concentration period for me. Often leading to fatigue. I tend to take breaks a lot. And luckily this page came through pretty fast. And I think that has to do with working in Procreate, which I'll kind of elaborate on a little bit later. But basically, having to maintain that high level of detail and creativity over an extended time, as some of you probably know, being artists yourselves, whether you're doing your own work or any aspect of a creation of a comic book page, there's a lot of work that goes into that comic book page. And if it's being touched by multiple hands, those are obviously, lots of different people doing it. And so when you're the one person doing basically wearing every hat in that workflow, it can be exhausting. But as a comic book artist who also provides, as I've been mentioning here, the color myself, there's a unique beauty to being able to kind of forge my own unified artistic vision. For me, there's like no translation lost between the artist and the colorist, because again, as I've stated, that's me. Every shade, every shadow and highlight aligns perfectly with the original intent of what I drew. So this synchronization can be rare, but it happens obviously when collaborating with a separate colorist. We're interpreting the original vision to its fullest might sometimes fall through the cracks. So while embracing color can sometimes feel like processing a necessary evil, the reality of it is that it resonates deeper and more surprisingly positive than it initially seems. So it becomes essential when considering the broader appeal of any comic book. Most readers gravitate magnetically, I think, towards color. It just attracts the eye, it expresses emotion dynamically, and it vividly ties the narrative together. So that is its benefit, I think. It's almost like universal language that speaks to diverse audiences, which, who doesn't want that, right? That ensures a wider acceptance and appreciation. At least that's, kind of the plan or the hope. But, despite my love for black and white art, I can't envision my comic books stripped of color. Each unique color enriches the narrative tapestry and expands the storytelling experience far beyond what could be achieved otherwise. And that's true, I think, in this market, like color comic books, definitely that's what you're drawn to when you see them online or in a comic book shop, right, on the rack. So, it provides not only this depth, but this layer of allure, inviting readers to immerse themselves more fully within the world I've created. And there's also this budding adventure seeker in me who genuinely finds coloring fun, on the other hand. And that might surprise you, but the blend of technical skill and personal artistry is pretty cool. I think it's exciting to me when I'm in that phase, when I can get into that hat, wearing that hat in that role as a colorist. And so to circle back to what I said earlier about coloring my comics in Procreate, I can especially get excited about working in Procreate because two things really. Procreate itself, I love the UI, the user interface. It's so simplistic and it's so easy, it's so non-invasive on the workspace, and obviously you need to have that because this is a much smaller device. It's a mobile device, and you need to have that room, right, to be able to work, not have your workspace, the canvas or whatever, when you're painting, coloring, drawing, have it not be cluttered. And I love that about Procreate, and the fact that it's also on the iPad Pro that I'm using here, which I will say that this is an older iPad Pro. I've had it since before COVID. And I just really can get excited about working on the iPad. I pull it off from the side here, turn it on, and I go to it. I do have a Wacom tablet, Intuos, and I have obviously Photoshop, and I can work in that space, but between all the distractions of a desktop, I work on a Mac Mini here. That's what I use here in my studio, in my house. But I far prefer Procreate on my iPad Pro. So it kind of allows me to indulge in in the realm of digital painting, pushing the boundaries of traditional comic book art just within the context of my work. And it satisfies that creative craving in the process. So for some of you who may not know, if you haven't seen my work, if this is your first time seeing it, these comic book characters started out as what I like to call character paintings. And that stemmed from, at the time, and this is pre-COVID, I started following this fantasy artist online, and his whole thing was painting angels, and they were just the coolest characters and paintings and everything. And that pretty much prompted me to whip out my iPad and start digital painting on there, creating these characters, because I wanted to be like, I've always wanted to be a comic book artist, but at the same time, I started getting into digital painting. I had tried it in the past before using Corel Paint, probably like 10 or 15 years ago. And I tried it, I bought a giant Wacom tablet back then, whatever that was, like back in the early 2000s. And I did a little bit of it, and I was like, I'd rather do traditional painting. So I've done, as I mentioned before, I've done a fair amount of watercolor, gouache, oil painting, acrylic, all that stuff. But then, going back to pre-COVID, like a year before COVID, I picked up my iPad and started painting on it. And I just started painting these characters again, being kind of motivated and inspired by this one artist. And so I fully developed like these over 30 paintings, all done digitally, some in Procreate, some in Photoshop, and produced like this art book and these like sketchbooks and a whole range of like related merch, if you will, like drawstring bags. I even at one point had some, I was kind of making it, what are they called, oracle decks or a tarot deck or something like that, that I had mocked up and had a printer put together like this mock-up, including like a case and this stuff. And I've got my mouse pads or my giant desk mats that I put artwork on there. And so like I've done all that stuff, and it's funny because all that stuff was inspired by this one artist. I was kind of following what he was doing. So needless to say, none of it really took off. There was some success here and there with it, very small, but again, I'm drawn to comic books, and that's kind of like the main topic here, right? Getting back into the color. So the coloring makes me, when I'm coloring my comic books, makes me feel like I can get back into that digital painter, which is still fun. I still plan to do some more stuff, but again, comics right now are still like my primary focus. That's at least this comic book here that I'm working on. And I think for being a self-sufficient artist, I think who handles both lines and colors, that kind of, I think, equips me with a broader skill set. I think that duality allows me to explore some creative fields as well. Whether it's graphic design to digital art presentations to video editing, like all this stuff, I think stimulates me. And like, comics, drawing this comic book is not my full-time job. I've got a full-time job outside of this here. But all these other like circles that overlap, I think it sharpens my artistic instincts and hopefully pushes further growth. And I think ensures that I remain versatile and adaptable, especially in the ever-evolving landscape of comic art. So, kind of to wrap it up here, put a bow on all this, so while coloring presents its challenges, it is definitely an indispensable component of comic book creation. Painting digitally might initially appear as an additional task on top of the already demanding pencil and ink work that I do, but I think inevitably it rewards me with a sense of completeness. So for any comic book artist, if you're kind of wondering, who's at a crossroad of committing to this creative expansion, I would just say from my own experience that reiterating that, integrating color within your workflow is truly a transformative endeavor, worth undertaking, if for nothing more than like, if you do it, you know what you like, you know what the struggles are, you know what you're good at. And I guess if you're trying to hire someone to fulfill that role, if you have the ability to hire someone to color your artwork, then at least you know what you like, and you've been through it. And there's that being able to relate, to the colorist who you're hiring to do this work, because then you come from a place of understanding of like having done that. And for myself, having colored, this is the 4th issue, as I mentioned, I've colored 3 issues. I kind of have myself a little flow, and so it works out now. I do think if this was my full-time job, like seriously, I'd be kicking ass and knocking this stuff out. It's just between what I do outside of doing this here. Obviously, if we've got a job, you've got a job. If you got a family, you got a family. So there are priorities or just times when your focus needs to be elsewhere. But the time that I do spend doing my work, doing this artwork here, I am engaged and I love it. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you like this video, comments are great. Please like and subscribe to follow more or to see more. And then I will catch you all in another video. Again, thanks for watching.